You know what they do, if you're doing countertops or things like that, you're doing landscaping work, if it's stone, they are stoned. They got it. It is an incredible inventory. You got people from other states coming in to take advantage of that. And then, it's that time of the year, next Wednesday, America's largest block party, Cruise on the Coast. There are going to be more national media there and car shows on a sundry of channels. Non-stop fun entertainment on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It'll be from Moss Point to Bay St. Louis, and on Wednesday, the incredible JT Show will be there live. Biloxi Town Green, Highway 90, America's largest block party. Biloxi Town Green on Highway 90. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the Super Talk crew will be live downtown New Albany. I got to tell you, we look forward to that. It's next Thursday for the Tallahatchie River Festival. I'll be there. JT, Rebecca, Matt, Richard will be there, helped out at the Tallahatchie River Fest for the weekend. And on Saturday, there'll be entertainment, including music from headliner Diamond Rio. I love them. On Saturday night, TallahatchieRiverFest.com. If you are looking for a great place to go with the family, and you will leave indelibly impressed with the city of New Albany. Really is. So more about that coming up a little bit later on. So let me get to the State Auditor, who is in the studio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Good to be with you.
You heard the last interview with the chairman of the Senate, Gray Tollison, as far as education is concerned. And your thoughts about what you heard and where we are now as far as the status of any inquiry or whatever.
Well, Paul, where to start? Yeah, I did listen in. I called Gray, Chairman of Education of the State Senate. I hope that they take further look at what peer committee reported at the first of the week and at the two reports that we're going to be releasing. The two watchdog agencies for the state, the Legislative Peer Committee and the State Auditor's Office, are both publishing scathing reports this week about the Mississippi Department of Education, the lack of oversight from the State Board of Education, entering into these contracts. Appears to be contract splitting. Our investigations will prove if any money has been misappropriated. And it's more than just what happened in a handful of contracts a year ago. We've got companies, it looks to be intentional circumvention of the state purchase laws, the state rules and regulations set out by DFA, which is statutorily authorized to be the only agency establishing those bid laws and purchasing laws. And if they have set up their own system, they call it their pool system within education. We'll be defining that this afternoon, that the Mississippi Department of Education had a system internal to themselves that violated state law. And if one red cent has been misspent that should have gone to the children of the state or our classroom teachers, as state auditor, I will not hesitate using the full extent of the law to recover that money.
Well, first of all, you said you had already done the report. The
reports are done, and we'll be releasing those.
So you know the information of the report. So has there been misappropriation of funds?
And that's an investigation issue that we'll be getting into. The report has
That's not part of this report.
It's a compliance audit that we find out where the state laws complied with.
We know
not, then it becomes an investigation.
Is there an amount we're talking about here?
We are not ready to talk about amounts because we're still working on those numbers.
Does it matter if it's intentional or not? It's just non-intentional?
No, it doesn't matter. If you've misappropriated public money, it must be paid back. Matter of fact, education has a history of this. Last year, they misappropriated right at $7.6 million. No one's talking about that we had to pay back to the federal government. That's the kind of lax oversight that we have taking place at the Department of Education. You could almost, refer to it as a culture of negligent oversight. That's the accounting term that you're going to take a look at.
I have a question here, and it's a question, and it's probably a question that a lot of people are asking out here. Why isn't there more ire and angst and aggravation and probably some anger from the board or from the members of the House and Senate?
I have never been able to understand that I can report every fall that the MAP funding formula has bad data. A couple of years ago, they actually started correcting some of the problems with the funding formula, to the legislature's credit. But when their $7.6 million has been misappropriated in the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education and Office of Inspector General says you've got to pay this money back, and then they call the auditor's office and say we want to deputize you to go in and do a forensic audit on our behalf, on behalf of the federal government, which is what we've done for the last year. we've got real problems, real oversight. And no one in the legislature or the media is shooting up the red flares and saying, we've got a real problem when it comes to how they're contracting and how they're spending not just federal dollars, but state dollars.
I asked, and we were talking about this to Gray a few moments ago, even if everything was unintentional and it was all on the up and up and legally as far as their appointed Attorney General representative in that particular agency, even if it were okay, I don't think I would have done it if I'm somebody who's moved to a northern position or a northerner moving to a southern position, because you have this cultural mistrust that's kind of built in there sometimes. But then to award those contracts to acquaintances across the Mason-Dixon line, I'm speaking culturally, but it doesn't seem like a good idea,
Well,
number one. And the way you did that by splitting or circumventing.
Well, it's not only that, they hired one of these contractors as the chief researcher for the Department of Education. Within a year, he resigns and step away, and then they award another contract, which is in direct violation of state law for nepotism and
All
for,
right, how long
they're
has this
supposed to
been
lay
going on?
out for a year.
Through the tenure, Dr. Wright?
Yes.
So this is what, 3 years, 4 years?
This is 3 to 4 years worth of work that's been taking place, the way these contracts, the way they've circumvented contracts, but this culture of obstructionism is not new. One of the first arguments I had as auditor during my first term was when the superintendent, there was a $20 million error in the funding formula that year. That was the first time we realized they were gaming the system and playing with numbers. And in my office, that superintendent looked at me and said, "Why are you so upset? It's just $20 million. That's the first time I actually yelled at somebody in state government.
Can you tell me who that was?
I just do the math. I mean, you can figure out who was serving at that time, but he's a college president now. He is out of state. And when he said that, when he said just $20 million, it was like that episode of Andy Griffith where he said, "Oh, let me put those words back in." He realized he had really misspoke, and he didn't realize, and I lectured him for the next 10 minutes on the fact that Mississippians are working overtime. They're honest, they're paying their taxes, they're sacrificing just to be good citizens of this state. And it's never just $20 million. That's $20 million somebody worked hard for, earned, and paid their taxes, and were honest about. And that kind of negligence, that kind of cavalier attitude has to stop in Mississippi.
What's the breadth of the forensic, when you talk about a forensic audit?
We're going through all their federal contracts and spending in the last.
Has that already been done?
Yeah, that report will be released today.
And that's part of the press conference?
That's part of the press conference.
It's going to be when and where?
2 o'clock at the Woolfolk Building.
2 o'clock at the Wolf Building. Will anything be recommended after that?
Yeah, we've got recommendations, not just the findings and the problems that are taking place there, but also we've got recommendations that we're going to be giving as the auditor and say, this is how these things need to be corrected. These are the issues that need to be addressed from a financial management standpoint. And the legislature should be up in arms. The legislature should be demanding answers. The peer committee, they can't talk about what they heard behind closed doors. And if I was a member of the legislature and I wasn't serving on peer, I would want to know what was said during those meetings. And I would be demanding that there be real hearings held, that there would be people sworn in, and let's have honest hearings that are open to the public for accountability and transparency, not just for tax dollars, but when it comes to the education for the children of Mississippi. We fight over, this is the majority of our state budget. We should be concerned. And then when we're dealing with the future for our kids, this ought to be the number one issue. Every policymaker ought to be diving deep into this data.
When you had other agencies actually invite you in to do an audit,
Well, yeah.
Is that the same as the MDE?
No, and that's part, when I say we've got a culture of, I'll be glad to talk about that.
I want to ask you that. How easy have they been to work with in trying to solve some of these problems themselves? State Auditor Stacey Pickering, who doesn't appear to be real happy this morning. I don't know if are you going to be okay for the press? Are you going to make it till the press conference?
We'll get a cup of coffee. We'll be doing good.
No, the decaf on one. Decaf on one. Back with more coming up next. Woo! Andy. Coming up on JT Show, you'll hear from William McKinley. William, the Deer Program Coordinator for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Football season's on, deer season's round the corner. Latest news updates on Mississippi's deer population. And this year's hunting season requirements and things like that, any changes, make sure you stay tuned to JT coming up from 10 to 1. And then Rebecca and her award-winning show. Today, we gave her the awards. It's so new that she'll get the rest of them later. But today on Good Things, you'll hear Don Mitchell of the International Conference on Blues at Delta State, how the conference is helping spread the word of Mississippi's influence in the world, across the world about our music. And on Head to Head, more about the scandal that has rocked and is rocking the NCAA and college basketball. Several college basketball coaches arrested this week in a federal corruption investigation. The FBI is involved, and as we have noted this morning, people are asking, in relationship to the Ole Miss thing, where was the NCAA on this? Which is a good question, but we'll save that for a little bit later, because we cannot ask the state auditor to investigate this one. He's got enough on us.
At some point, we've got, at some point, we're out of business.
Okay.
Our plate's loaded.
The JPS thing we were talking about off the air too, I mean, that's another situation that has to be handled one way or the other.
It's got to be for the sake of the students, for our capital city. We've been doing compliance audit. JPS is a train wreck. And right now, the Department of Education is looking at it academically.
And victims of the students.
The victims are the students. It's the parents. You know, they're rallying. They want a good situation. They wouldn't be turning out to these meetings if they didn't want a good education, a good opportunity for their kids. The problem is it's been run in the ground. It's been mismanaged, like Hattiesburg was a few years ago. They had to come in and put somebody in there. They did massive layoffs, had to make some big decisions, cut out a lot of extracurricular programs, but you start getting it built back. And that's what's going to happen at JPS. It's going to have to take some hard decisions, and that's an academic issue, not just financial. It's an academic issue of where the priorities and how it's structured. You asked a question earlier, though, Paul, about how long has some of these contracts been going on. When the reports we're going to release this afternoon stipulates and gives you the dollar amounts from 2014, 2015, 2016. This is not something that just happened, oh, by the way, last year that was just tied to magic.
Yeah.
These contracts have been ongoing since 2014 is when we've started seeing the splitting take place and these problems. And
You weren't involved in it then, though.
it's got to be fixed.
In
No.
14?
No,
But
we've
that's
gone
my
in and done our
question.
compliance audits.
But that's my question, please, is if I'm a taxpayer here, as a taxpayer, you've had through 14, 15, and 16, then we ask before the state auditor gets it, we ask the boards who we put in there, they're there for that, to have some oversight, and what happened?
That's just it. And that's what we'll be asking, finding out the answer to those
Because I mean, it's
questions.
been a long time, like you said, if it just happened in 16 or last year or the year before.
Unfortunately,
you ask
local,
what happened.
local boards and commissions and the plethora of state boards and commissions, and we've got a comprehensive, exhaustive list. Our office had to go through and do the research of how many boards and commissions exist. They just trust their employees when they say, hey, we're out of money, we can't meet, or hey, give me a rubber stamp authority and I'll just do it when y'all aren't meeting. And they trust them to such an extent that
You're talking about the boards.
The boards misappropriate money, and they don't intend to. They're good people. They're not bad people. They just trust the wrong people.
But most of them.
They don't realize it's their fault.
We had a couple on the air, and one, the airport commission, and I was asking these people, first of all, they had no knowledge other than they took a plane somewhere.
Right.
You know, they weren't pilot, they weren't trained, they didn't have a business administration background, but they're just on the board because of who they were. Why in the world do we do this?
My wife was asked to serve on the board in our local county.
Yeah.
And I told her when she said yes, I said, when they bring up the docket to pay invoices, you better question every single one of them. You need to know. The fact that city council meetings last an hour and they're not asking questions on every single check they pay,
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
Let's not be naive, though. Most of these boards, even if they've got good intention the first 2 or 3 times there, about the third, they go into a coma. This is boring. I'm ready to get out. Let me have my check. Let me do the obligatory thing. Whatever you guys say,
And
because
like I
that's
said,
above my head.
They forget they're dealing with taxpayer money.
Yes.
And why are they there? For oversight.
So why do we have boards?
The legislature, I hope, is going to address that. We're going to be putting out more reports on that this fall. We've got some big news coming out on that issue. The legislature has to take the financial accounts receivable, accounts payable, especially these smaller boards that don't have the staff, don't have the expertise, and put it at Department of Finance and Administration so we've got good oversight of those monies. Because right now, I promise you, money's being spent. I suspect money's being stolen. And these boards just don't know the questions to ask to get the oversight in place, but we'll be talking about that later this fall.
Is there a future investigation, or but there's an ongoing investigation as far as the
We
committee is concerned?
don't comment on ongoing investigations.
So, what will we learn from the press conference this afternoon?
We're going to learn we're going to go through the compliance audit, what we found in that, the problems. Some of it's going to reiterate what Peer reported on Monday, and it's going to give a little more detail than what they reported. They're limited in what they can release sometimes. We're not necessarily restricted, but also we're going to go through the forensic audit we conducted on behalf of the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. And the taxpayers need to know, the policymakers in the legislature need to start asking these questions and their level of concern needs to be elevated significantly. You asked the question earlier also about how do other state agencies respond when they've had misspending. DPS, Department of Public Safety, MEMA, when they had similar problems over a year ago, they called us and said, come help. Come help us look through, figure out what we've got, and help us deal with the federal government. Department of Education, historically, over the last several years, has closed the door and wanted to stiff arm the State Auditor's Office when we've tried to go in and figure out where the dollars are going and how they're spending it. It is a culture of obstruction.
It is a culture of obstruction during the tenure of Dr. Wright.
Correct.
Much like the Attorney General's office, the State Auditor's office, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can just make recommendations. You don't have any other authority beside that.
That's where the
You have your
legislature,
opinions
that's
and
where it
that's-
stops.
and-
Our research, what happens in other states, what the GAP and GADSP, what the rules and regulations for those organizations that govern government finance, what they lay out there is what we put
So
forward.
you will make those recommendations at a press conference later on today
This
at the
afternoon.
Bullfrog Building, and then it's up to the legislature to act on that,
Correct. And the Board of Education can act on it.
and the Board of Education. Are there names available as far as on the Department of Education's?
It's out on their website.
It's on their website.
All you gotta do is Google Mississippi Board of Education
All the names
members,
are there.
and it'll give you their pictures and bios are all listed right there.
All they get- all
They're
they
not
get-
bad people.
Oh, I
They're just
understand that.
not, they're not doing what they
Look,
need to be
I've
doing.
known people on boards, whether it's on county, city, it doesn't, nonprofit organizations, and it's just typical of me interviewing them and talking to them that after about the third meeting, their eyes glaze over. They've made this responsibility, even if it's not a paid, even if they don't get any stipends. And after about the third or fourth meeting, they don't want to be there. Because a lot of the things that they're talking about is not only mundane, but in many cases, even if they happen to be a brain surgeon, is over their head if it's in another
Well,
field.
if it's in another field, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
they're the ones approving the
I
invoices,
understand
they're
that.
approving the contracts, and they're the ones financially liable to the taxpayers of the state of Mississippi.
Well, the boards were brought up in the last legislative session, and I'm sure that they'll be brought up again.
It will be. This should be a big issue that needs to be addressed, right behind roads and bridges and education.
That
Those are gonna be the big issues.
$7.6 million of money, what happened to that? Did we pay it back? or
We had to
what?
pay that back to the federal
It
government.
came out of the general revenue?
It came out of the, it
Didn't
was
come out of
appropriated,
education department.
it was appropriated to the education department, and they cut that funding,
So
and
in other
that
words,
money
out
has
of
been paid
revenue,
back.
we had to spend $7.6 million that went for nothing but paying back the federal
Paying back
government.
the federal government. We're a poor state, we cannot afford that, but it's not just a problem there.
7.6 would have paid for some teachers in the areas that we don't have any teachers.
Absolutely. It's that simple.
Would that have been matching money?
Well, I think so. The money was in a federal grant program. It had been spent a certain way, but Paul, it's not just an education problem when it comes to these federal grants. We
We
have
only get-
$100 million that potentially could be clawed back by the federal government right now.
Well, that's a little scary.
I said it at the Neshoba County Fair in our speech this year, and I called for the government, we need a federal grant oversight and management office to do the training, to do the oversight, to make sure all the rules are being funded.
In all agencies?
All agencies, because we can't afford to have to pay back money like we're doing at DPS, Department of Medicaid, MEMA, and now
How
Department of
much are we paying
Education.
back total now?
Well, there's a lot of negotiations trying to reduce those numbers, and hopefully it won't be as much as that 100 million total, but we're involved in a lot of those because those agencies have asked us to help, and to their credit, they're doing a good job.
It's a little scary. Okay, one more time this afternoon. What time?
2 o'clock, Woolfolk Building, we're going to have a press conference, walk through the reports that we're releasing on the compliance at the Mississippi Department of Education, as well as the forensic audit we did on behalf of the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Inspector General.
State Auditor Stacey Pickering. Sir, thank you for coming in.
Hey, great to be
Appreciate it very
involved.
much. We got More information and sound bites on tax reform, the big overriding story across the country this morning on a national basis. We'll do that coming back in a moment.